Hey guys, John here. So today we are in a red vortex. So I told you I had a lot of these little graphics built up, and I'm not going to hold out on you. So today's red, especially with the red background here, that's kind of cool, right? Kind of looks pretty interesting. But anyway, so the title of this video is the three biggest mistakes that I have personally made in music production, and maybe you have as well. And I encourage you to share yours and kind of just help everybody help each other out. So if someone's kind of maybe falling in a certain trap and you've been there before, maybe leave a comment and say, hey, this is what I've done. This is why you shouldn't do that. So I'll go first on the first couple three. The first one that I kind of think is maybe the most important for me is that buying a new piece of gear doesn't necessarily make you that much better with some certain tidbits, and we're going to talk about that. But basically, whenever like maybe a new synth would come out, or maybe new microphone, or maybe a new guitar or something like that, we think that once we get this piece of gear, we're going to be significantly better in our production, right? If I only had that, then I'm going to be way better off in whatever I'm doing, right? So the first time this ever happened to me was, oh man, I think 2007, maybe, I don't know. So I had FL Studio for the longest time, 2004, 2005, something like that. And at the time, it wasn't the greatest DAW, but I also wasn't the greatest engineer, so we went hand in hand. But I still made a lot of cool stuff. And I would always hear Pro Tools, right? And it's pro, it's professional. Of course, it's going to sound good, right? If I had Pro Tools, my mixes would be so good, my arrangements would be perfect. I just needed Pro Tools, right? So fast forward a couple years, I got Pro Tools, and to no surprise, my mixes still sounded like garbage. It was still bad. It was still horrible. I'd listen to like these old songs, and I was like, what was I thinking? What was I going? Why is that even in there, right? So, and I think that can still hold today, right? If we're like, I need this brand new synth that just came out. It's really cool, has all the bells and whistles, and you get this feeling of, I really want to get this, and you read the manuals, you look at reviews online, you read what people are saying about it, you hear some samples on it, like, oh, this sounds really cool. I really need this. And then either way, what ends up happening is one, you don't get it and you kind of just let life go on, or two, you might save up your money and you finally get it. And once you do, it's really not as exciting as the thought of trying to get it. Once you actually have it, it's like, oh, okay, now I have this thing, and I guess I'll play with it a little bit, and sometimes you don't even end up using it all that often that you thought you would. So I guess this just kind of goes to say that you don't necessarily need these fancy things to really level up your production. You can do something really great in some older software, or maybe some older synths, or maybe a microphone. And this is kind of the territory where there's kind of like that little asterisk on the side, right? If you're like, I really need these new headphones or new speakers or a new microphone, that could potentially change it, right? Because if you're monitoring on something that's awful, and then you actually upgrade to something that's actually of quality and you can hear everything, then yes, that's probably going to help you out in the long run once you get used to your speakers or headphones or something like that. But there's always, kind of a give and take kind of thing. So that's one thing to kind of look out for. You don't necessarily need this brand new hot piece of gear to level up your tracks or your music production or whatnot. And the other aspect of that is, even if you do get that software, then use the crap out of it. Like, actually spend the time and invest your time, because you paid for it, right? So you should actually like get the time and the investment back, I suppose. So that was number one, and I've written down the other two because I'm getting a little old here. So, okay, this one's actually kind of funny. So more isn't always better, and I suffered from this for a long time. I was like, okay, I have a drum groove, I have a bass, I have maybe some leads, maybe a pad, and then, I don't know, maybe I'd put a vocal in it. And I was like, what more can I add? What more can I add? What more can I add? And after a while, there'd be like tracks just going and going and going and going. And I was like, man, this sounds like trash again. What is going on? I keep adding more stuff, but it keeps sounding worse. I don't understand. And that just kind of goes to the spot that sometimes you really don't need that much stuff. Sometimes if you start taking some things away, it gets a little bit bigger. And I noticed that one time where I removed like some pads, I removed the leads, I removed these weird sounds. I don't even know why I picked them. And really, at the end of the day, it was just kind of a groovy drum track and or drum tracks. You know what I'm saying? Some groovy drums, and then just a fat bass line. And I was like, dude, this is it, right? So, and I kind of just left it like that, and it sounded way better. So sometimes more isn't always better. And then what kind of really wrapped that concept in my head, I don't remember exactly where I picked it up from. Like, you know how you pick up these nuggets of information all over the place, and they kind of just grow with you into plants and seeds. Anyway, so I got this information, and it kind of really made me think of something, right? So let's say you're watching a movie, and there's lots of different actors and characters in the movie all throughout, right? They'll introduce some people in the beginning, maybe one or two, maybe three in the beginning, depending on what you're watching. And then they slowly start introducing these different characters inside the movie. And it kind of makes sense. And we don't really think about it. So imagine if we watched that movie and in the first scene, they literally put every single character right in the front, and like you just see everybody that's in the movie in the first like minute of the show, right? Or the movie or whatever you're watching. It would be kind of hard to notice everyone individually, right? Instead of just introducing maybe a drum groove and some bass line and then start adding some hi-hats to it and then maybe add a snare and then maybe start like introducing some other elements. So the brain can kind of acclimate to what's going on, right? And there's always that design concept. So something I kind of learned in 3D, right? So there's like the primary detail, there's the secondary detail, and there's a tertiary, it's a freaking weird word. The third detail, good Lord. And after that, it's kind of like your brain tunes it out. It's not as special. So I guess long story short, you don't need a bajillion tracks in a certain spot for things to sound good. Sometimes less is more in that case, even though that's super cliche to say, but it's true. Okay, so number 3. All right, so I kind of fall victim to this as well. And basically, it's cool to learn the technical stuff of it, right? Like the real nit-gritty things, like I was talking about like the synth course, right? Like we need to know what harmonics are and so on and so forth. Like the real kind of like, I guess for lack of a better term, the nerdy stuff, right? That we find like in DSP manuals. Like that stuff is really cool to know about. I mean, personally, I love reading about that. I think it's interesting. Once it starts making sense, it's a good feeling. But at some point, we have to kind of let that information take a little bit of a backseat and just feel the music and get into that vibe and kind of know it, but put it aside, right? Put it in the passenger seat or even in the back seat or maybe even in the trunk for a little bit and kind of just go with your gut, listen to your ears. Because I was having this conversation with an engineer friend of mine, and what we kind of notice is that there's two kinds of people that you'll talk to, and some of them are like, okay, when you load in your tracks inside your DAW, they all have to peak at -6. They must be -6. And if they're a little bit over or under, you have to correct for that. And it's like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. That's really interesting and cool. But like sometimes that doesn't always have to be the case. I think in that sense, you're kind of letting the technical aspect of values and decimal points and, stuff like that kind of take a little bit more priority of how does it actually sound, right? Because we'd probably be surprised from a lot of our favorite songs that those people probably don't do that. Think of your favorite artist or your favorite musician. Are they sitting there and like doing every single little analytical thing? Maybe some, maybe that's possible, but probably not at the end of the day. They're feeling their music. They're writing a song. They're telling a story. They're taking you on this transition of like, here's where the song starts. Here's the journey that the song takes you through. And here's the end where you actually just get off the song and do something else, right? So that's kind of the concept, I think, that we should maybe kind of think about a little bit. It's cool to know the technical stuff. That's awesome, right? But at the same time, actually make your song and, tell that story, write your lyrics, express yourself through your music that you're doing. That's kind of what we're doing all at the end of the day, right? Because the person listening to that song is not going to care at all if something is like -7.2, right? When you're starting to mix the thing, like they don't care at the end, and I guess I'm gonna add a little tidbit to this. This is just kind of interesting. I thought it in my head, right? Um, so what's kind of cool, and you've probably noticed this as well. Once you finish out a mix and you like how it sounds, and I think a cool piece of advice that I learned personally, it's taking that mix and then showing somebody else, and not necessarily maybe in your room, but showing him somewhere else, and then listen to it with this other person. And what's weird is like you're gonna look at the other person, kind of see like, okay, are they gonna notice this thing that happened? Are they gonna notice that like huge 808 or something? Is the corners of the lips gonna go down? Are they gonna like the song? And when you're listening to a song almost through somebody else, you really hear your song in an entirely different way. So that's not really necessarily a mistake part of the video, but I was like, I maybe just share a little extra nugget there. That's kind of a cool thing, right? So most of the times when I finish a track, I kind of like showing somebody else before I put it out there, because there's lots of times where I'm listening to it with this person. I'm like, damn, that verse is way too long. I was just trying to buy time. I busted myself. God dang it, John. Bring that back down to 32 or 16 bars. Like, stop trying to extend things longer than they should be. So that's just one thing I'm going to leave you with. This video probably went a little bit longer than expected. But anyway, if you're still here, please let me know the stuff that maybe you have done in the beginning, or maybe anywhere throughout your journey, and to later find out like, oh man, that was kind of a mistake. Maybe I should have not done that, and you've learned from it. I'd like to know, because maybe there's some things that I'm still doing, or someone out there is still doing, so we can all become better at the end of the day. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you share something with me, because we all like learning. We're learning people, right? And yeah, we'll see you in the next video.